I'm Dr. Greg Nye. Welcome back to the deep dive. It's been a while. I was busy, line was along in the bank or something. Um, so I'm gonna, the phrase the perfect is the enemy of the good. Well, that's kind of my thing. I keep thinking I want to just spend a lot of time and develop each one of these in this really deep way, and then I end up not doing any of it. And so I'm going to use these podcasts a little differently. I'm going to just talk about the things that interest me. I'm going to try to explain why they interest me and, just do it more like would talk to anybody if I'm sitting down and having a conversation. So I've got a bunch of tabs on my desktop that have been open for a long time, and I feel like I gotta just get some of this talked about so that I can close it up and move on. So today I'm going to talk about kind of an oddball topic. It seems like maybe it's not relevant to naturopathic medicine, but I'm going to tell you why it is at the end. And so the topic that I'm going to talk about today is how um, evolutionary theory is this mythology that is allowed to explain all kinds of things. Darwinian evolution, and there's neo Darwinianism, and I'm not going to get into that, but you know what I'm talking about. Things evolve, like nature does this. Uh, Random mutation, natural selection, and things over time become new things. And that's kind of the story of evolution. And we're supposed to think that that happened, from the simplest molecules in the beginning. And then, they mutate and they change and whoa, life happened. And now it's a bacteria and now it mutates. And somehow things just become cats and elephants and plants and it all happened through this random process, right? That's the mythology of evolution. It's the one we were all taught. I was taught, of course I believed it because I didn't really think to question it until I did, until I really actually looked at the evidence that this is a viable theory. Is it actually a theory? Like, can we call it a theory? It's more like a model or a hypothesis or whatever. But I want to show you an example of how this myth of evolution gets conveyed in the scientific literature, uh, and how kind of challenges to it get, they use these demeaning terms to prevent anyone from openly challenging the myth. And then I'll bring it around to naturopathic medicine. So I'm going to try to switch my screen over here. So this is an article that this came out in the journal Quanta magazine, which I really enjoy. It's very geeky, but they have interesting articles sometimes. Um, and so this particular article is what physical life force turns biology's wheels. So the claim of this article is that they have discovered how evolution created this unbelievable. This is it's called a bacteria flagellum, and this is a motor that spins on a bacteria. I mean, at an astoundingly fast rate, and it's built exactly like a motor. But I don't know if you can see my cursor here. These these are all individual proteins. Now, in order to get two proteins to work together, they have to fit together in a functional way, and they don't just start like that. You don't just start with that motor. You got to build every one of those proteins. And you got to build it in a way that it functionally interacts with every other one of the proteins. If you take any one of those different colors, which represent different proteins, if you take any one of them out, the whole machine shuts down. Either they are all there or they're none there. It all works together or it doesn't work at all. So this article claims that this see this cream, what was that cream sort of color, reddish cream right here. It's called a stator. It's you can see the bacteria flagellum. This comes out this way, and that spins, and it spins and spins, and that's what pushes the bacteria forward. Okay, so this article is claiming, oh, we figured out how evolution came up with this stator right here that wraps around the flagella. And so, and actually, let me just go to where they make that claim. Here's how they do it. Watch, look at this. Creationists hold up the bacterial flagellar motor as a prime example of intelligent design. Now, this is how it's kind of poo-pooed. Oh, and you know, people who buy into intelligent design, those are creationists. They're the same thing. That is not accurate in any way. People who question Darwinian evolution, that is not automatically creationist. That is ridiculous, but that's how they frame it. So, okay, what do they say? Specifically, the concept of irreducible complexity, a biological system so intricate, they say, that it couldn't possibly have arisen in stages through the gradual, stepwise process of Darwinian evolution. Yet it very much did. That's what it says right there. Yet it very much did. The implication being that this article we're going to link you to will explain how, in fact, these complex things actually did happen through some stepwise evolutionary process that needed no input of any other mechanism other than random mutation, natural selection. Let's click into the article and see what we find. So here's the article that, yet it very much did. Here's the article that shows it, and it's the evolution and structural diversity of the stator, insights into the origins of bacterial flagellar motility. So this article is making the claim that it has discovered that, oh, yes, in fact, this one part of the bacterial flagellar motor, we have figured out how it arose through evolutionary processes. That's what this article is saying. All right. How did they come to that determination? Let me tell you the 6-step process that they went through to come to that conclusion. Step 1. Look at over 700 different proteins across lots of different types of bacteria with flagellar motors and look for, so you find similar proteins among them all. Sequence homology, where you can see, oh yeah, some sequences are similar among all these. They came up with over 700. Then, next step, another computer thing, they align them as much as they can, where, okay, that sequence there's the same alignment as this, we can lay them on top of each other and they're the same amino acid sequence. So they do all the alignment that they can among all these similar proteins. Next, they feed it into another program that allows you to essentially, it does this computation where you set the speed at how fast or slow you want it to evolve, or in this case, devolve. You want to move back in time to watch how these sequences end up falling into sort of these families. They start to merge together so that as you set your dial and let the machine calculate back, you come to these sort of base families that all, they've converged together. Multiple of them converge together, but they're not exactly together because there are these blanks, gaps in the sequences that didn't exactly line up and you couldn't get the evolution to work just right. And so what do? Well, you use another machine to guess what actually filled in the gaps, so that we end up with sequences that are actually now much better aligned because we just filled in gaps in the way that allows them to do that. So now we have this base set of of sequences. And then, so the next thing, now we have amino acid sequences, we have to know both the DNA that it came from and the shape of that. Like if you turn that into a protein, what is the three-dimensional structure of it? All right. Well, you use some AI to generate three-dimensional structures of these various sequences. I hope you can see that this is absolutely not looking at how random mutations and natural selection came to this bacterial flagellar motor. Nothing in this article is talking about the probability of the mutations needed to happen in order to go through the evolutionary process that it's saying it's explaining. All it did is tell you that evolution did it. That what we call evolution, random mutation, natural selection, it did it. It's starting with its conclusion. And then it just says, here's how it did it. But it's not actually telling you how. It's just going through a series of steps and saying that, well, it just happened. If something is wildly improbable, it's not true that if you give it enough time, it's going to happen. Actually, let me say that again. If something is impossible, it's not true that if you give it enough time. And it is true, even if it's wildly improbable. For example, I don't have to convince anybody that if I leave a basketball sitting in the middle of the floor, if I just wait enough time, that basketball is going to transform into an elephant. That's impossible. It doesn't matter how much time you wait, we all know that's not going to happen. There are other events that are so wildly improbable that even if the universe were 1,000 times older than it is now, it would still not happen. It just wouldn't. Uh, so, to give you an example, let's say flipping a coin and having it land 5 million times in a row on heads. It's possible. The probability is so low that you could flip that coin 1,000 times a second, and within a universe that's 100 times older than ours, you still would never land on that. It's too improbable. You can't give it enough time. So in evolution, when they say that things, go through random mutation, well, there are certain mutations that are so wildly improbable that actually you can't just say, well, with enough time, anything can happen, because it can't. It's outside of the realm of probability. So, in an article like this, what they avoid is the probability. They don't address probability. And that is the downfall of the whole Darwinian evolutionary model. So why am I even talking about this? Well, first of all, I just get annoyed that they try to pass this off as somehow, the glorious achievement of Darwinian evolution is that it can explain something like how the motor on a bacteria flagellum came about. It can't. It's not what it's doing. Let me show you. Unless you think that I'm, a lone voice in this, here is published in August of 22. Exactly the case that I'm talking about. It's saying that neo Darwinism, which is random mutation and natural selection, that's neo Darwinism. It must mutate in order to survive. And the whole point is that is brought up in this article is that neo Darwinism cannot deal with probabilities. It says things happen by chance. But if you say that, you got to confront the fact that when you say the word chance, you're bringing in the idea of how probable something is. If something has the probability of 1 in 1,000, and you let's say uh let's say a certain card hand has a probability of 1 in 1,000. All right, well, if I deal myself 1,000 hands in a minute per minute, all right, then I expect to hit it one time in a minute. If the probability of it is 1 in 1,000 and I do 1,000 in a minute. What if I deal myself a card once a year? Card hand once a year. All right, well, crap, now I'm looking at 1,000 years before I would expect to hit it. Well, what if I deal cards every million years? Well, I'm pretty sure every 1,000 million is a billion. So I got to wait a billion years. You see the point. The probability of something happening determines how much time you would expect to pass. So I know you're wanting me to get to my point about all this. So I'm pointing to this particular article to just highlight the fact that this is not some fringe creationist, kind of criticism of this grand theory of Darwinism. This is inside the institution. I've got books on my shelves all around me that go into this in detail in lots of different ways with lots of scientific evidence behind them. The reason I'm talking about this is I want to in naturopathic medicine, it's built on this idea. And just highlighted here, the healing power of nature is the inherent self organizing and healing process of living systems, which establishes, maintains, and restores health. Naturopathic medicine recognizes this healing process to be ordered and intelligent. Now, I have taken issue with one of the authors of this, Dr. Jared Zeff. I would say they used the wrong word. It's not ordered, it is organized. And those are very different. I'm not going to go into all that difference right now, but let me just switch out of this and back to a better camera. So, our medicine is built on this idea that it is the way our bodies uh, achieve, establish, maintain health, and the way they recover from disease. In other words, the repair process is intelligent. And so we have built that word intelligence into the very foundation of our medicine because it's real. It's a real thing. Intelligence is the product of a mind. Now you can come up, make up some new definition of intelligence. It says, oh, everything is intelligent and everything. No, no, no. Has always been well established that intelligence is the product of a mind. It's not my rule. I didn't make that up. You can go into any uh, until they started modifying it in recent years. It was always acknowledged that intelligence was a mental phenomenon. Now, my point is that the use of this Darwinian model to explain how bodies are doing what they're doing is it, one effect is that it turns bodies into machines. Bodies are not machines. Brains are not computers. Bodies are not machines. But to use that model, it dehumanizes us because it's like, oh well, these happy accidents happened over time, and whoa, look at that, here's a body. It all just happened. um and that's unsubstantiated, and it's also it kind of demotes the elegance of what is happening in bodies. And I think the second effect, so it takes away from the humanity, and it also reprioritizes what we talk about when we're talking about restoring health. And it it kind of in the naturopathic model, where organization and intelligence are dynamic properties of living systems, you're not just fixing broken parts, which is kind of the conventional model of medicine. So I'm not gonna dwell on this. I've already dwelled too long. It's just something that annoys me that I see all the time in the media, and I throw it into my archives thinking I gotta just vent about that a little bit. But anyway, I hope this was, maybe a kind of a unique way of looking at, I don't know what, kind of Darwinian models, explanations for life, which are horribly deficient in a lot of ways, and are it's not all about creationism. It's about actual scientific investigation of, is this model adequate? Is it sufficient to explain what it's trying to explain about life, about humans, about disease, about all kinds of things? And if your model is broken, then that leads to a lot of downstream effects that are based on that broken model. So anyway, if anybody has feedback, you want to challenge me on this and tell me you think neo Darwinism is absolutely rock solid, please do. Well, first of all, subscribe. I got to say that. And put comments in here and, let me know what you think. Give me a thumbs up so I get a little wider distribution. That would be great. So, all right, I'll be back soon because I'm going to just start cranking these things out. I'll be back soon with another episode of The Deep Dive.